Gam ki eilig vergeet samen wes laïre kiota imodi shiv techo mishan techo ay mo nachamo ni tarach v'nai.
Welcome to Journeys to Judaism. I'm your host, Shaul Anthony. Join us each episode as we speak to converts to Orthodox Judaism. Be inspired by their stories, their struggles, and success, all for the goal of joining the Jewish people, right here on Journeys to Judaism every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m., only on KDNRadio, the King David Network. Judaism for your ears, heart, soul. And we are here in the studio on a very hot Wednesday evening. We are here with Chana Miriam Lenn. This is our inaugural show, so you get to be our first guest here. This is Journeys to Judaism. I'm your host, Shaul Anthony, and we'll be coming to you every Wednesday evening with different people's stories and different people's journeys to Judaism. We have many different types of varieties of people from all sorts of different backgrounds. And we have one of our good friends here in the studio with us, actually, well, via remote, but I'm here in the studio. Chana Miriam Lenn is here with us. Say hello.
Hi.
So nice to have you. And you're actually coming from U of M campus?
I live off campus.
Okay. Well, we'll get to more of that in a minute. So basically, we're going to start off with kind of your story more from the beginning and how you got into Judaism. I and others know you as Chana Miriam Lenn, but it wasn't always that way. So maybe talk about a little bit about your upbringing.
So I come from a very religious Christian home. I grew up non-denominational, which is essentially it's a very religious Protestant lifestyle that doesn't really subscribe to a specific church. They might call themselves full gospel, maybe even somewhat evangelical. My family is not nearly as stringent as the pastors and the teachers that I learned from when I was growing up. They're a lot more open-minded. But I had a wonderful family, still do. That's one of the things I'm very grateful for is that, I hear horror stories of people who converted, who lost touch with their family, and that's not the case with me, thank God. My family's, they're not thrilled, but they're very accepting, and they try to accommodate, my new lifestyle as best as they can. But I grew up going to church almost every Sunday. I went to a parochial school from the time I was in preschool till I graduated high school. My father had us do prayers and Bible reading every night. We had to memorize different verses every week. Religious studies were a major part of our curriculum. And obviously part of that is what Christians refer to as the Old Testament, what we refer to as the Torah. So we had some initiation into what Judaism looked like, but it was, of course, not from a Jewish perspective. It was not from a correct perspective. It was very much biased, but we still were brought up with the notion that the Jews are the chosen people. It's because of the Jews that we have a Bible, that the Christians believe that they have a Messiah. So we were taught to treat them with the utmost respect. So that was my upbringing in a nutshell. Is we were definitely not taught any anti-Semitism, but we were taught things that were incorrect about Judaism. But it still fascinated me, even as a young child. I can't explain it. It just always felt a pull towards it.
And would you describe your life as feeling fulfilled at that time?
There was a very brief part of my life where I probably felt like I was fulfilled, that I'd finally started to come into my own person as a teenager. But even then, it was very difficult. Honestly, it felt like something was missing. It really did. I even remember my first memory, really, and we didn't even know that much about Jews and Jewish practice. But I was watching television and I saw a Jewish family lighting a menorah for Hanukkah. And my initial thought was, they're so lucky they're Jewish. And I remember being maybe 5 or 6 years old and making a comment to my brother and said, I wish we were Jewish. And he said, no, you don't. You have no idea what those people have been through. Which he was right. I had no clue everything that Jews have faced and still face today. But yeah, it was, that desire had always been there, and it felt a little empty inside. It's hard to explain. I always felt very uncomfortable in church. And as I got older, I started to feel a little bit more comfortable, but things just weren't adding up to me. They weren't making sense. And then the more I started to study Judaism and the more I started to look at things in the original Hebrew and see that the things that I had been taught in church and school all those years weren't being framed properly, the more I started to have a lot of doubts as to whether or not what I was believing really was the right way.
And did you do any soul searching before you really said, okay, now I'm going to do Judaism, or did you really kind of see yourself as a Christian who was interested in Judaism?
Probably at first I did. When I went to college, I had a couple of advisors who were Orthodox Jews, and I worked with some Orthodox Jews in one of the research labs I was working in, and talking to them sort of rekindled my interest. And I love my family very much, but I lived in a very strict environment. I'm the only daughter in the family, and I'm the youngest. So my parents kind of had me a little bit on a tight leash. So I didn't really feel as free to sort of pursue my own discoveries, my own interests in religion. I've always been a people pleaser. It's something I've been trying to fix. And I think for a long time, I tried so hard to maintain the faith that I had growing up simply to please my family. So it really wasn't until I left for graduate school. I went to New York for a few years. And that's when I really started to study more about Judaism, but it was more about again, trying to do it the safe way, the Jewish roots of Christianity. But even that, it just seemed like a watered down version of what the Torah really says. Because again, it was picking and choosing what we follow. And it just didn't feel authentic. And I mean, for me, it wasn't a choice of, do I believe in God or do I not believe in God? I have always felt that I just had to believe in God, not out of an obligation to anybody, but I just have that feeling in my soul. I have to have a connection with God. And it can't just be, a little in and a little out. It has to be all or nothing when it comes to God. So that's when I decided I was going to approach a Chabad rabbi. because where I was, it was a very remote area of New York. It was in central New York near the Finger Lakes, and Chabad was the only Orthodox shul around. And in fact, it was such a small area, they didn't have a beis din. They couldn't even start the conversion process. The best that they could do is say, be involved with us. We want you to come and participate, see if this is something that you're really interested in. But once you graduate and you're mobile, then move to a larger Jewish community, really see if this is something worth pursuing, which is what I ended up doing. Once I finished my master's degree, I came back to Detroit. After a few months, I moved to Oak Park and started from there. And it was so difficult. Even when I first started, even when I approached the beis din in Detroit, because that whole belief in, that whole Christian precept of if you don't believe this way, you're going to hell, still ate at me. So I felt like I was living a double life for a while. And that I felt like I was betraying everybody doing what I was doing.
It's easy, I think, myself being a convert and you being a convert, that there's a certain amount of, I think, maybe guilt that you have, just like you said, because you grew up in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And you think, okay, maybe some of my friends I haven't seen in a while, they may not know, or telling your family or whatnot. But along the way, I know for myself personally, you just your faith and everything is strengthened the more you're in the community. Maybe just touch a little bit also about your time in New York when you weren't quite in the process. How was that as far as a major transition? Because you're pretty much going from church to some sort of Jewish affiliation. That can be kind of funny starting out.
It really was. But one of the things I love about being part of the Lubavitch community is that they really are very open, welcoming people. I know there are people that do not have positive experiences with Lubavitch. There are many people that look down on them because of their activities, trying to bring Jews closer to what they see as the true Judaism. And it's the lifestyle that I prescribe to. But really, at the heart of the matter is they just want you to feel that connection. It's really their intentions are very much, if you are ready for it, we want you to feel that connection. If you want the connection, we're here to help you get it. We're not going to push you into it. We're not going to force you into it. We're not going to guilt you into it. And whatever your lifestyle is right now, that's between you and God. It's not for us to judge. And that's how I felt, especially coming in as a Christian at the time. I felt like at first there was a target on my back almost, but that feeling went away really quickly. I got very close with one of the rabbi's wife. I babysat their children. She and I would study together. The Rabbitson and I would study together. They were always available for me for questions. I was going through a particularly rough spot, and the rabbi and I were supposed to meet for a weekly study session. And I was just so upset. And he said, we can think about the parsha in a little bit, what's going on. And he sat down and just let me lay it all out. We must have spoken for 45 minutes just on this. And he said, look, whatever you need, if you need me to go with you when you deal with this, I'm happy to help you. Whatever, you just don't hesitate to ask. And that's the attitude that I've seen from practically every frum community I've ever been in, is let me literally drop everything I'm doing to help you. If this means it's going to make you feel better, if this means that, you're going to be able to relax and not be so upset or nervous, let me have that chesed.
Very nice. So that was your experience when you were first getting involved. So tell me a little bit more about how, when you came here, you got more involved with the beis din, and maybe about your initial couple meetings. How did they go?
Rough. One thing that somebody said to me that I would definitely want other people who are considering going through conversion to consider. The Beis Din is not there to be your friend. They're not your friends. They have a lot of responsibility, because if they put you through this and you're not ready for it, then they actually have some responsibility over what happens. And that's a very large responsibility. Once a Jew, always a Jew. And, you know, they have the rest of the community to consider. They have you to consider. You know, this is a huge upset in your normal lifestyle. So they're not there to be your friend. They are there to make it hard for you. And they really lived up to that with me. They made it very difficult for me. But I was, and also another thing is find somebody in the community to advocate for you. Get close to a Rav or a Rebbitzin, somebody who will go to the meetings with you, which was a mistake that I made. I didn't do that in the beginning. I didn't know I was supposed to do that. I went to a lot of my meetings on my own. So I didn't really have a buffer to kind of go between myself and the Beis Din, who would check in and say, hey, you want her to be learning these things? Well, she's mastered that material. But I was very fortunate to find a Rav who really went to bat for me and spent a great deal of time learning with me. And this is really another thing that kind of made just a stark contrast between the approach to Judaism and the approach to Christianity that I think really helped seal the deal as far as me saying, yeah, I'm ready to give up my past beliefs and embrace this new one, is that most rabbis that I've ever asked to sit down and study with me clear so much of their time. They are so well learned. They have books upon books upon books upon books that they can give you and will go through with you in great detail. They will answer as many of your questions as they can. I was really struggling at one point. I made an appointment with a pastor, with a few pastors actually, and many of them just didn't seem like they could answer the questions that I was asking. And one of the ones that did really just kind of brushed me off. I said, you know, in the Christian Bible, it talks of two lineages of Yeshka, but both are from Joseph. He said, oh, no, one's from Mary. I said, no, they both say of Joseph. And he basically said, go back and read it. In my head, I was thinking, well, we're in your office in a church. There are Bibles everywhere. Why don't you pull it out and show it to me? Why can't we go through this together? Why are you just telling me to go read it and then just accept what you're saying? Every rabbi I've ever studied with has said, let me show you where this is. Let's go through this. This is what this says. This is what that says. Here's what one commentary says. And the Rav that I learned with actually knows a great deal about Christianity, and he actually laid out quite a few discrepancies in translations that many Christians and pastors completely overlook. And that's what really kind of pushed me over the edge was, you know, here are people who have been studying and studying and studying with such fervor for so much of their lives. It is so difficult to become ordained as a rabbi. It is so easy to become ordained as a pastor. And I just thought, they have been studying this for thousands of years in such great detail. Why should I doubt what they're telling me?
It's very important to keep that faith, like kind of like you mentioned, just having the faith in what Chazal and what our sages say, and the fact that you're joining a bigger organism that holds to those traditions.
Yes.
Did you have any point along the conversion process where you said, maybe this isn't for me?
Yeah, I did. A couple of times, actually. I did take a break for a while. A lot of it had to do with my own health. I had a lot going on. I had some really awful experiences with somebody who'd been very abusive towards me. I had health issues. Plus, the conversion process was stalling, and I was getting very frustrated with it. I just met a lot of resistance, and I got to a point where I just said, you know what, I can't do this. I was starting a new job. I said, I need to face one thing at a time right now. So I called one of the Ravs and said, look, I'm taking a break. Maybe I'll come back to this eventually, which I did about a year and a half later. But after a few months, even into the break, I started learning again with my Rav. And eventually, I got to a point, and he said, look, you know, I'm happy to learn with you, but I want to know, what's the end goal here? And I said, you know, I think I want to start it back up again. And he said, I think that's good, and I think you're ready. I think you're in a much better place now, and I think you're ready to start keeping Shabbos and keeping kosher again. And I think that you should get in touch with the Beis Din, and let's get this moving forward. And within a year, I'd done everything that the Beis Din thought was necessary and was able to go to mikvah. But yeah, I did take a break for a while, and I'm glad I did, because there was just too much going on at once that I feel like if I had jumped into the lifestyle as a full-fledged member, probably would have left a bad taste in my mouth.
Interesting. I've known of converts in this community and others who some were, you know, on again, off again for some for years even. Someone I know that was on again, off again for like 6-7 years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean,
a long time to live in limbo.
Yeah. So, but I think ultimately, if you really want it, you as the advice that I got from a fellow Ger, good friend of mine, he said, if you want it, you take it.
Yes.
And I think that ultimately, I think every Ger, many that I've experienced, either before the conversion, they say, okay, they put their foot down and say, I'm going to do it. Or if they have ups and downs in the middle of the conversion, they still, at some point, there's a watershed moment where they say, okay, this is really what I want. And you push yourself forward. And, you know, with Hashem's help, that you're much like, you're definitely have a success in that regard. So tell us maybe about, you know, your mikvah day, or at least how you felt, and, you know, the other side of the mikvah.
So ironically, God, this was so ironic. Ironically, my mikvah date was on Christmas Day. I even asked one of the Ravs, like, are you sure that this is okay to do this? And I was like, yeah, sure, it's fine. Don't worry about it. You know, don't overthink this. It's totally fine. But it was such a special day for me, and there were so many women in the community who had helped me, your wife included. So I invited quite a few of those ladies to come with me and celebrate, and they were so supportive. In fact, there was a lot of back and forth between, okay, when are we going to do this? And I didn't hear from the rush of the Beis Din until the evening before. And he said, okay, we're doing this tomorrow. So I texted all of these women, and I was like, it's happening tomorrow. I mean, if you can come, I'd love it. If you can't, there was one woman who couldn't make it. Everybody else was like, yep, we'll be there. They left their jobs. They left like kids at home with babysitters. I mean, they quite literally dropped what they were doing to be there. And it was very, very special for me. It was interesting because, you know, the Beis Din still, they ask you right before, you sure you want to do this? Because once you do it, there's no turning back. And you're obligated to follow the rules. This isn't a game anymore. This isn't just, you know, you're going along with it. This is going to be your life. Are you sure you want to do this? And then at the time, unfortunately, this was when many of the stabbings had been going on in New York. And one of the Ravs said, you know, their anti-Semitism, it's never gone away, but we're seeing a huge rise in it. Are you sure you want to consign yourself to facing this and your children? Are you sure that this is what you want them to possibly have to face? And deep down, it was like, I hate the idea of bringing children into a world where many of them are already going to hate them just by virtue of the fact that they're Jewish. But I feel like what I have to give them with their Jewish identity it just outweighs the possible risk. So once I'd been in the mikvah, there were two ladies there who were helping me with the prep and everything. And when I came out, I could hear one of them crying. And I started crying, and then I saw my other friend, they immediately were just like mazel tov. They're both so overcome with emotion, and I just started sobbing because I couldn't believe it had finally happened. And it still didn't click. Like I was still wrestling with the fact, like, wow, this is true. I'm not in limbo anymore. I'm not a Gentile trying it on for size or pretending anymore. This is true. And one of the mikveh attendants said, when they asked you, why are you here? And you said, I'm here because I want to be a Jewish woman. It just touched me in a way that I wasn't expecting. She said, I took for granted my Jewish identity for years before becoming religious. And the fact that you're here because you want to be a part of this is just very moving. Once I came out, I mean, all of the ladies that were there, they just started clapping and singing, and it was so wonderful. One lady said before, because I went by a nickname, that wasn't my proper English name. It was just a nickname. She said, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is the last time I'm hugging Nina Lenn. The next time I see you, you're gonna be Chana Miriam." And it was very overwhelming. And the Bezdin had like a little kiddush. They gave me my official name, and they had like cake and wine and some other drinks. And that was also very emotional, was when they gave me my official name. And all of the women were still there. They were listening in on this. We were passing around l'chaims to everybody, and one of them there said, we have to have a party. We have to celebrate this. So we came up with an impromptu party for later that evening, and they all showed up. And the next morning, when I was saying the morning brachas, and I reached the point where it said, I thank God I am not a Gentile, it hit me. It was like, I can actually say this, and it's actually the truth. My friend and I went to the oil in Crown Heights that day. We went to for the last few days of Hanukkah. I spent my first official Shabbos in Crown Heights, which was wonderful. I went to the oil, and I was so overwhelmed by the fact that I could finally write an official Hebrew name. And after you've read your letter to the Rebbe and you tear it up, you recite some Tehillim, and one of them was Kuf Yud Tes, and I started reading in English because my Hebrew at the time was still a little hesitant. So I was reading in English, and it just started to hit me when it starts talking about how I love your Torah. I've bound myself to your commandments. And that's literally what I had just done. And it was a very overwhelming, very special few days. I was on cloud nine for a long time. I still feel like I'm on cloud nine from it. I finally feel like a complete person. And some of my friends, they bought me cards, and they each said, "Welcome home." And it's true. I mean, it sounds maybe like dramatic or what have you, but it really does feel like you've come home, like you've come into your own identity, come into yourself as a person. That's how I felt.
Nina becomes Chana Miriam.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a great story, and there's a lot, and you kind of mentioned it, but there's a lot in a name. The name you're born with is fine, but it's I think for a Jew who chooses their name,
Yes.
It's there is that connection to the neshama, to the soul.
Yeah.
That's very important. So we've got a few minutes left, but maybe just kind of speak to how do you feel on the other side of the mikvah, and how really should someone who's interested in Judaism, what steps or precautions would you recommend?
It's been 6 months since the mikvah, so I kind of still feel like I'm in the mikvah honeymoon phase. I do a gratitude list every day, and many times I've noticed over the last few weeks, the thing that I'm most grateful for that day is I'm so grateful that I'm a Jew, or I'm grateful that I have the Torah. I'm grateful that I have these things that connect me to God. And I hope that keeps going. I hope that this is something I never take for granted. One of the things that really touched me was not that long ago, I saw this article about a woman who'd survived the Holocaust. And I think for her 100th birthday, her family, most of her family, went to the Kosel to celebrate. And there were, I think, over 400 people there. And that wasn't even her whole family. And all I could think of was, if I do nothing else with my life, if I could do something close to that, where I could live that long and see generations of Jews, and to know, and for them to say, we're here because of Bubby. We're here because Bubby made a choice, and she gave us something that no one can ever take away from us. That would be the greatest success of my life, I think. As far as those who are hoping to join the tribe, it's definitely a worthwhile process. But if you're not sure, if you're not 100% committed to it, if you have a lot of doubts, first of all, address the doubts. Speak to a Rav about it, but this is not something for the faint of heart. It's, it changes you. It changes the way you think. It changes the way you relate to people. And it's not bad. It's just different. It is a little difficult because, my mom, a wonderful saint, I love her to death. She shows love by feeding people. She's a typical Greek mom. She wants to feed everybody who comes into her house. And if she can't feed you, she feels like she has somehow failed as a person. When I told her that I was keeping kosher, God love her, she immediately went, what can I buy? What can I cook that's kosher? And I had to explain to her, not all, but some of the rules involved in that, because she doesn't keep a kosher kitchen. She said, well, what if you just tell me what to do? And that way the kitchen will be kosher. I said, well, once you cook something that's not kosher, that's it. That's the end of it. She was so devastated that she can't feed me anymore. I mean, she's wonderful. Like, they gave me a cabinet in their kitchen where I can store my stuff. They're very accommodating. When I can't be certain places, or when I can't talk at a certain time, or like they know not to call me on Shabbos, or if they need to call me, that I'll call them as soon as I can. I was davening in one of my parents' guest rooms, and my mom knocked on the door and came in. She saw me standing up davening, and she immediately was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Like, of course, it wasn't a big deal. It was, just the fact that she's trying to be so sensitive. It's wonderful, but it's awkward trying to navigate some of that. So it will really change the dynamics with you and your family. But it doesn't have to be negative. And I feel like one thing that I wish I had done more was involved my family more. Because for a while I felt like I was living a double life, because I was so afraid to go to them and tell them that I didn't believe the same way anymore. Because my family's very religious. They take their faith seriously. And I don't think I gave them enough credit, really. They're way more open-minded than I gave them credit for, and I feel like I should have broached this with them sooner rather than later. Even though it's worked out fine, it could have gone better.
I think it's difficult to know how to navigate. I know some Gerim that have their parents are very, very supportive, and even if they come from Christian backgrounds, they're very, they're okay. I'm over here, but we sort of meet in the middle, sort of thing. I've known other families that basically the families became B'nai Noach, and good friends of mine, the two brothers converted, and the rest of the family remained B'nai Noach. And then I've known other people that there is like a stigma there. There is it becomes tough for me. They don't have such the best relationships.
Yeah.
And I think that maintaining relationships, and also for yourself, like not necessarily letting your own convictions like get in the way of your relationship with your family. I had a situation once where something might have gotten a little bit sticky. In the end, it worked itself out. But somebody told me, they said you could grow payas down to here, and they said you're still going to be Saul to your family.
Yeah.
Which is true.
Yeah.
So it's a certain sense of responsibility. I think that's probably the general word for the Garage process is the sense of responsibility that you will have to the Jewish people, and also the responsibility you have to be the Or L'Goyim, to be the light of the nations, which includes your immediate family usually at that point.
Absolutely.
Or you might have some relatives in your family wherever they're Jewish, maybe they're not religious, maybe they are, and just to have that responsibility. So we're really just about out of time. Is there anything else you'd like to share about yourself? Maybe promote? We kind of mentioned you being at school. Maybe talk about what you're doing now a little bit.
Yeah. So right now I go to University of Michigan, go Blue. I'm currently working on my doctorate in chemistry and scientific computing. So I actually am fortunate to work for an Israeli who thinks I'm crazy for having done this. For sure. But he is very understanding, very supportive. Even though he just does not agree with anything I do, he's very understanding. When I can't be in the lab on certain days because of the Chagim, or one time he went to give me a high five because I finally figured out a problem, and I kind of looked at him and was like, and he goes, "Oh, that's right, you're one of those." Like, yes, that's right, I'm one of those.
Religious people.
Yeah, so but he's wonderful. He's very supportive of that. But I do write for a blog that talks more about my journey and my thoughts on Judaism and things like that. So it's just called My Jewish Journey. And I have a Facebook page dedicated towards it. The website is myjewishjourney2017.wordpress.com. And if you want, you could also follow me on Twitter. My handle is Lubavitch Lady. So that's all I can think of, unless you have anything else you want to ask.
That is excellent. Like I said, we're about out of time, but thank you so much for being our first person here on the show.
What's your guinea pig?
So you definitely won't be the last, but thank you for taking out your time with us this evening, and we're going to send you off with some music. Thanks so much for being on.
Thank you for having me.
Yehudi ha'emiyah lefasei mizrach